So, all right, let's start off with I know a bunch about your business. So, Ryan
Mm.
Johnson from Respond 365, previously, bunch of other names too. So, let's hear about what your business is, how we got here, and then we'll kind of get into it, the conversation.
Okay. So, really, this started, and it will probably help explain why we're really B2B versus B2C. But just like anybody else, I started, went to EMT school in '94. By '96, I was finished paramedic school, and I knew I wanted to do something with education. And so, just like a lot of especially pre-hospital providers, CPR is just a natural kind of first step. You get in, and that's what I did. And then, over the course of time, I've added the rest of the alphabet, instructor things to that, right? But and I was Ryan with a mannequin, and I was out doing just a couple classes. There was no business. It wasn't designed to be anything. It was just earning some extra money on the side. I taught some classes for the training center that I was aligned with at the time, um, and then I got a phone call and from our training center coordinator and at that time, that training center, they did not go do off-site courses. Basically, if you wanted to take CPR, you came to them, and that was fine.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they didn't go do off-site anything, um, and so the the phone call I got was it went something along the lines of, "Hey, we've got a business that's looking for some CPR training. Can we give him your phone number?" And I have known Janet. She was a training center coordinator at the time, and I had known her even before becoming a CPR instructor, and so we had a pretty good working relationship. So I didn't bother to ask, yeah, who is it or how many or anything like that. I just said, sure, give him my phone number. And so that phone call that I got was for a health college in this
Okay.
area. And they did things like medical assistant, CNA, those types of courses. And they had rolling enrollments, meaning about every 6 weeks, a new group of students would start. And so it wasn't your traditional like semester type things. And so that was the phone call I got. And they said, we're looking for an instructor to come over. Not an employee. Like we want to, basically contract this stuff out. And okay, is that something you think you can do? And maybe it's a good thing that I was just young and thought I could take on the world, because I said, sure, yeah, I can do that. How many people are you thinking? And they said, well, it'd probably be about 50 people every 6 weeks. And I said, oh, yeah, I could do that.
This was pitched as you as a one-time, "Hey, can you just teach a class?" And then now
Right,
you
right.
got the subscription. Okay,
That's a
okay,
fact. Yeah. And
okay.
so I was like, oh, all right. And so, hanging up the phone. And of course, this was in the late '90s that this happened. And so that was the genesis of a business, right? I, I was barely getting my feet wet as far as, um, you know, just being an EMS provider. And, I taught a fair number of classes, but I can't say I was any sort of expert. And I certainly had never run a business. And so it was baptism by fire. But looking back now, I don't know that I would change anything, because it was a pretty awesome experience. Right. And it's
Yep.
helped me to sort of help others to say, hey, man, these are the things, right, that maybe we need to think about. And so I hired a a friend of mine that I worked with. I went and became an actual employer. I just ran it as a sole proprietorship at that point. I was like, hey, I got this one big gig that seems like it's going to be a recurring thing over and over again. You want to make some money? And so we went in again, still not thinking that this was ever going to expand into anything else. But I
Right.
was, and and then the same thing happened. Probably a month or two later. I don't recall exact timing, but to where another organization had called, and our training center, and this one happened to be um, a large aerospace provider that they had been doing all of their stuff internally,
Okay.
and then they wanted to outsource it. And of course, I was like, "Sure, I can do that."
The
So
answer is
that
always
was,
yes.
yeah. The answer is always yes, and thankfully, I didn't fall flat on my face. Not to say there weren't probably some hiccups and learning curves, but um, that was the start of it all, and it shot out of a cannon. And I mean, I can still tell you the name of the company back then was Medical Training Concepts, right? Like, how basic is that? Like, I just tried to come up with some words of what can, I don't know, what sounds like a good company name. And then that evolved into something else. And Respond 365 is, this is the one that I have felt incredibly solid with, which is why, a year and a half or so ago, we rebranded into that because it really better described, what we were doing. We're trying to teach people, prepare people to better respond to an emergency anytime it happens. And so
Hmm.
that's, but so even business names, and you see it in, giant companies, sometimes they rebrand and do things. But yeah, so that started it. And, here we
When
are.
you so you mentioned right at the beginning, you had taught a couple courses, but the first thing that really kicked off the business was this business relationship that fell into your lap. Opportunity usually finds people that are looking for it.
Yeah.
The classes that you had taught before, had you started with the intent to have a business at that point in time, or you were just like,
No.
what were those classes?
Honestly, so I started, like I said, with CPR. Like, that's the easiest thing to get in. It's the sort of the natural, especially for like EMS providers, healthcare educators. A lot
Yep.
of us start with that route, and which was the same for me. I I had no plans. Business wasn't even in my vocabulary. I knew that I wanted to teach and educate, and to me, it was, all right, BLS, ACLS, PALS. I sort of set this goal for myself that, and that was back in the day when you kind of had to be recommended, and you sort of had to earn it, right?
Yep.
To a degree,
Yep.
and so but my goal was any certification I held, I really wanted to be so strong in that. And with each additional one, I've already, maybe proven myself more that, I was a good educator, that I was well spoken, that I presented well, and all these things. And that I wanted to sort of, because, and part of that was because going through EMT school and paramedic school, I had a burned out instructor. I had, um, you know, people that just had no idea. Reading from the book was their idea of education, right? And things like
Yep.
that. And it was just horrible. And I really felt like that needed to change. And so, um, wanting to educate and do that, but it was never, I want to do that as my business. I wanted to just do that as part of, um, somebody else's program, if you will. Now, I did teach, I would go and do some CPR classes for, like maybe a small daycare or something. But and the other reason for it was just extra money. I mean, yeah,
Yep.
so yeah, and no vision of ever starting any sort of business.
So let's start from we're in the origin story, but to
Yeah,
anchor people now, you don't have to share specific numbers, but where are we
sure.
today? Like, what's the size of Response 365 when you talk about it?
So it is it's completely self-sufficient to where, I could, y you know, uh, full disclosure, I still choose to hold a traditional job, partly because I really enjoy, um, what I do, on that front.
Yep.
I'm no longer patient care facing, so, I was kind of, forced retirement from a neo-peds transport team, and, for medical reasons. And, but I still work for that organization, partly because I love what I do, with that. and only able to do that because I'm surrounded with pretty good people on my business side. But the other thing is, you know, I, there's a fear. No matter how long I've done this, um, to be solely reliant is a little bit of a fear, and I think that's important to say to people that you can also grow, and other people are dependent on me, and that's all okay. But I could live off of the business. And so we have instructors in Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, Ohio, Iowa, Kansas, Arkansas. But our primary, I would say, Illinois, Missouri, would kind of be where the vast majority of our business is done.
Hmm.
We're near triple digits for number of instructors, so we're not huge. We're not super small either. But
Right.
I think one of your previous guests, ran the largest training center in New York, right? That's not us.
Yeah.
Um, that's not us. And I know we'll talk about that later, but that's not ever going to be us. Um, as long as I'm at the helm. Now,
Hmm.
whoever takes over, which I know who that is, but if he decides that he wants to grow, it's his business to do with, right? But yeah, that's not currently my state of mind.
When did you make that decision?
Uh, I think it just probably everything we talk about today. I don't know that there was ever a clear point in time where you kind of put pen to paper and say, "All right, this point forward, this is the thing." But I do think over just a progression of time, um, one of the things that I am incredibly proud of. There's two things that I kind of demand of everybody. One is integrity, right? Do the right thing, even when it hurts. Do the right thing. You'll never really be wrong for doing that.
Hmm.
And and so the other thing, and kind of part of that is, if you're doing the right thing, uh, you, and so I look at things like, okay, if you have 5,000 instructors, how can you realistically ensure that things are being done well? And I'm not 100% by the book person. I'm not saying that, I mean, I don't, I'm not a perfectionist, and things don't always run perfectly. But I do believe in guidelines, and things exist for a reason, right?
Yep.
And consistency, and there is a shade of gray, and that we all can fall into, and sometimes you have to, decide what is the right thing. But how can you realistically ensure that those instructors are doing what they should be doing, right? You lose a lot of control with that. And not to say that organizations that are that large are running shady, shoddy businesses. That is not what I mean to say at all. I just don't want to. Um, that's not what I want to do, right? I want us to be small enough that we're a definite player in the game, but
Hmm.
not so large that you start to exponentially increase the risk of, because the larger and I say this to everybody, one rogue instructor, I have a pretty low tolerance for what I will tolerate when it's fine to make a mistake, but I tell them, like, look, if you show up and you have all the right equipment and you have all the right things, and one of your mannequins catches fire, and now suddenly you're outside the compliance of how many mannequins you should have, do the class, right? Do the class, and extend the time that it takes to do it, and
Yep.
note that. That's different than just not showing up with mannequins, or, having one mannequin and you got 40 students, and, that's a whole different and that person isn't going to survive beyond that class. They're done, right? And so,
Yep.
um, it, it- so that those things happen. And so when I look at that, I don't want to. I want to be able to know that the instructors that I have, if they decide to go rogue and go off the rails and all that, you don't just put yourself in jeopardy. It's not just you. You put my business, but I'm not worried about the business as much as I am the people that depend on this business to exist. And that I'm not willing to tolerate. Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So for me, that's probably the biggest reason that I really just don't have. And I randomly picked the number 5,000. Right. I don't have a hard number that says once we get to this, we're not growing anymore. I think it's more of that feeling. Right. You kind of know. And some people would say that's, man, you can't run business on feelings. Well, I've done it for almost 30 years and it's worked out well. So
There is, past a certain size, you always have inflection points of just complexity, and you
yeah,
have to solve for those inflection points as they happen. You can't just grow organically and not be, we'll talk about investing in your business to
yeah,
solve the problems of delivering quality at scale. At some
yeah,
point, you're delivering the same thing. How do you maintain it, either by, regional complexity, number of times that you're teaching it, all that stuff.
yeah. Yeah,
Um,
and there are jumping off points to be clear that you have to decide like, all right, we're at this point that we either stay where we are or we have to take a leap of faith and grow, right?
yep.
And when those moments arrive, I think when I start questioning, should we do this, right? That's probably the point that we'll stop, whatever that is. Um and I just think if you stop and think about it, right? If you took that 5,000 and let's just say they were evenly divided in all 50 states. So you've got 5,000 instructors in 50 states. So that's 100 instructors per state. And let's just say that you have one, we'll call it training faculty, but it could be whatever the title is of the person that's going to oversee those 100 instructors. It would take one of those 50 to decide they're just drawing a paycheck and they like that. And for the other 100, so they're just checking boxes and they're telling you, yeah, everybody in Montana is great. Okay. Well, awesome. And you believe that. You rely on that person. Well, the other, those 100 instructors in Montana, some of them, if this cat doesn't care what he's doing or she's doing, right? Some of them are going to be like, man, we got no oversight. All right. Who's watching us? And that's when corners can get cut. And so that risk, that's what I talk about, the exponential risk, right? Um, it's not that you had a bunch of instructors themselves decide to go bad, but you kind of had one person that, maybe was in your circle of trust that maybe didn't go bad, but they just weren't really fulfilling the role of, their job and making sure that quality and compliance were in order. And then that just puts the entirety of everybody. And I will just tell you, I care more about my instructors than I do my business.
Yeah.
You know, if the business shut down tomorrow, it would be worse for my instructors than it would be for me. Simply because, I'm not unemployed. Like you're marketable. You can go find employment. And so can they. But yeah, some of those people depend on the income that they make as part of their livelihood. And that matters to me. So,
So what I'm taking from this too is, you have you have a quality bar that
mhm,
you want to maintain.
yeah.
You're growing to the point where you feel like you can maintain that quality bar without, even Mike in the last podcast talked about, his thought of even trying to manage remotely the level of liability and work it would take to try and deliver that consistently. So you've got a quality bar.
Mhm,
You're going a little bit by feel of how much can you maintain that quality bar based on what you have
yeah.
at your disposal or time or what's required to navigate that. A lot of it is creating a ton of standards.
Mhm,
And then you're kind of at that size. Now, an interesting thing that I'm going to bring back to the conversation here, though, is you mentioned you're at, less than 100 instructors, getting close to that number.
mhm,
Um, but you have a business that you could just work from the business
mhm,
and afford whatever lifestyle you have.
mhm.
That's interesting because I think a lot of people listening might think in order to get to that point, and I can say there's people that have more instructors than that are not at that point.
Mhm,
Um, you have to have an insane amount of volume to get to the this could sustain my lifestyle. Now again, lifestyle
mhm.
is a variable for a lot of people.
Right.
That tells me that you are not out there competing on price.
No, no, not at
Okay,
all.
so let's
Um,
let's let's get to that part of the conversation. Why do you feel
okay.
like you're not what's how is the math
Um,
mathing there for you?
well, okay, yeah. So look, you part of this is being a B2B business, right? Where uh, and I know we'll talk about that section of it, but that is part of what allows me to not necessarily and when I tell this isn't look, I only put 2 hours a week into this business, and that would be a complete lie, right? But have and certainly if I were starting today, it's a much heavier lift, right? But over time, certain processes do sort of go on autopilot. Now, it's not nothing is set it and forget it. You do have to continually look at things. But you have figured out, by trial and error sometimes, certain things, and you've gotten a vast majority of your business that really runs, right? And
Yep,
so now you're at the maintenance phase, and that maintenance tends to be, it's still work and there's still time involved, but it tends to be far less than, hey, look, all right, I'm going to start this business and I want to have 200 instructors, by the end of 2 years. And, and you, you have a lot of work to do, and you don't even know what you don't know yet. And so that takes an intense amount of time. But the other side of that too is if you're going to stand up a brick and mortar location and you're looking to pull in X number of students per month, right? Then you also you have a heavier lift than I do. And I don't mean that to sound any way like, but I'm not chasing an individual. That's part of my
right,
business model. Um,
right.
you need to get a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of ones coming through your door, right? Ones or
Yeah,
twos.
yep. Which
And
is
I
not
don't,
easy.
it is not easy. And yeah, and there's nothing wrong, with that. I think that's probably the vast majority of, um, people in this space. That's the vast majority of they're running their business like that, right? They've got a storefront, and they're trying to get people in, and then you have some people that also do some business. Hey, we'll come to you, that run a little bit more of like that kind of hybrid model, and
Mhm.
that's also okay. Nothing wrong with really any of those, and it's not to say that the way I do mine is better than the way you do yours. It's just different, uh,
Yeah.
and and it's what you want to do, right? What do you want to do? Um, I don't want to do that.
For everyone who just joined, thanks, Michael. So we're talking to Ryan Johnson of Respond 365. How long in the training space for that? Well, we're talking about since the 90s, so 30 plus years.
About 30 years, yeah.
Primarily, I mean, no, let's just say your B2B is almost
Mhm,
entire business. You're
mhm,
dabbling into the open enrollment, maybe.
yeah.
Um, runs a self-sustaining business at we need a size for it, around 90 instructors in 14 states.
I think we're 11. I may have
11.
said 14, but then I went and recalculated because I didn't wanna
Ah,
give, like, some BS number. Uh, yeah.
yep. Primarily B2B. So actually, let's talk about the if we can. You can always stop on details because I know more about this stuff from our conversations. Um, some of those 11 states, though, you have a B2B relationship that has presence in at least most of those states as part of that. So you're running
Okay.
a multi-state B2B relationship,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
And then when we were talking in the beginning of the conversation to catch everybody up is um, fate was on Ryan's side in the beginning because he was kind of he was
Yeah.
he was an instructor, right place, right time.
Yeah.
Someone off, someone gave him a one-off, can you teach this class one time that happened to be teach this class every 6 weeks for roughly 50 people. So, um,
Yeah.
told you it was a 2 foot pool and it was like it was a 12-foot pool.
Yeah.
Um,
I like to
and
tell
then
people I stepped in the clean mud.
yeah, exactly. Well, there is something to be said too about, I think in those situations, saying yes when the opportunity presents itself and making sure that you've kind of got yourself in a spot where you can take that on and respond to it too. That's part of it. It's the opportunities will present themselves. They don't always look the same way. And so
Mhm.
you've got to be in a position to do it. And then shortly thereafter, that turned into another B2B referral, right?
Mhm.
Sure, we were.
Yep.
Um, how far into that did you then realize, like, okay, if I'm going to keep building this, if I'm going to keep building the business in B2B, I guess the question I'm going to ask you is, have you fought off the idea of doing open enrollment? Was it like you figured out something in B2B? There had to be some epiphany that happened there where you've clearly been very intentional about sustaining B2B. And
Yeah.
before I'm going to go back to the conversation you and I had before we started this, where we're
Okay.
saying like, okay, we're in the fourth episode of doing this podcast. What are we really trying to do? And I think part of this is we're trying to tell more of a story of almost everyone who's in this business has gotten into it with almost the same thing. I started teaching a couple of classes to make some money on the side. And then some people that's just grown organically into I get a lot of my classes from find a class, right? And they just grown into
Mhm.
I teach classes. We're trying to show that there are a lot of other people that have been successful doing different models
Mhm.
and being more intentional about what kind of business they want to build and just give
Mhm.
people ideas. Mike
Yeah.
went one direction, highly technical, thinking himself as a salesperson. You got another person that was doing cards. Darla was doing instructor courses and things like that. You're very heavy in B2B.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've kept this very intentionally. When did that epiphany? When did you really focus at it?
I probably I would say it probably became really intentional over probably maybe the last 5 or 6 years of absolutely, it I don't know that I actually even thought about it, in the
Yeah,
beginning, right? It was, I kinda got, like I said, thrust into, "Hey, here's 2 large businesses that have a whole lot of people that they want you to recurrently train," right? Um, and the moment, that was enough. Like, I was like, "Okay, well, I started a business just sort of because I thought I needed to," right?
yeah,
But that was enough. I was like, "Ah, great." Because again, I had started just wanting to do some, side money, and I liked teaching. Because also, it wasn't just the CPR, like that training, those 2 businesses that I, uh, obtained, that was CPR and first aid training. But also, I was still teaching, ACLS and PALS on the side, and then, well, back in the day, it was BTLS, which is now ITLS, but, all the things, right? I was still teaching those on the side that weren't for, like, my business. That business was really, just created, because I thought I needed it, right?
yeah.
And maybe I did, maybe I didn't, but I'm glad now that I did it. And, so the then I found, because one of the I thought I was going to be a business and economics major before I ever set foot, in the classroom to become an EMT. The only reason I set foot in the classroom to take an EMT class is because, in my mind, this will tell you how much I didn't know about this field. So, if anybody on is an EMT or a paramedic, especially if you've been around a minute, I can hear you laughing once I say this.
I see at least two or three people in here that I know are. It might be calling in from the rig. So who knows?
Okay. So I took an EMT class because I was like, all right, I'm going to be like, I liked numbers, economics, finance, that sort of thing. My mindset was, I'm going to take this EMT class because here's what I knew about EMTs. I think these guys work 48-hour shifts on an ambulance. So I can go to school Monday through Friday. On Saturdays and Sundays, I'm going to work on the ambulance, and that's going to help me pay for college. So I didn't realize they made 47 cents an hour, right? So kind of thing. And but what happened was I took that EMT class, I took that EMT class and I loved it. I was like, wait a minute. So now you're telling me there's this thing beyond EMT called paramedic, huh? Because obviously you learn about that in your EMT school. And again, this was 94, right? So,
Hmm.
and I'm like, huh, you know what? I think I'm going to put college on hold and I'm going to see what this paramedic thing is about. And so I got into a paramedic program. And even though the instructor should have retired long ago and it just wasn't the best run program, but the content that was in it, I was very much drawn to. And it wasn't the Johnny and Roy, oh, there's trauma, it was the stuff makes sense to me. And it made as much
Yeah.
sense to me as the numbers did, right? Like, and so that was how I originally got into just healthcare in general. So I can't, now you fast forward a little bit. And so when the idea of business came along and, I or start this business because I thought I had to, and I let that be for probably a good couple of years. I really didn't do anything with it other than that kind of thing. And then I thought, you know what? Um, I wonder what this could be. And so then I started being a little bit more intentional. And I like the back ends. Like there are some people that just they hate the business part of owning a business. They can't stand the back end work. They love the
Yeah.
going out and teaching the classes, but the behind the scenes work is what they loathe. I just happen to love both of those sides. And so you know, spreadsheets and finances and all that. That's first of all, money's never been my focus. And I know some people may not believe that. That has never been my motivator for any of this. But the stuff you have to do in the background to have an effective business, I actually enjoy that. I don't mind that at all. And so it, yeah, it was. I don't know. I think that helped me for sure because I didn't see it as work.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and yeah,
y- so you're managing you have got at least, and we'll talk about the extent of the portfolio, but you have
sure.
B2B relationship in multiple states.
Yeah.
I'll be the guy to say, uh, that they don't have, in some worlds you'd say you're teaching the same thing
Mhm.
that anybody else in the closer to them could teach. There's a
Yeah,
reason that they're still working with you,
yeah,
and it's not because we've already established. It's not because you're the cheapest,
right.
right? And it's not because you're offering a different certification than anybody else.
Mhm,
They could go find an instructor probably within 5 minutes of them. Why
mhm.
do you think that you still have that relationship with them?
So, I think that's, a phenomenal and I was kind of, like, chomping at the bit to sorta get to this point. That so if you look at I mean, there's a list of benefits to doing B2B, um, and I'm sure there are some cons associated with it as well, but to me, like, the benefits of doing it are pretty great, and, um and there is nothing wrong, I really want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with that traditional model of, I got a storefront and I'm posting classes and trying to get as many students through the door.
Yep.
But when I deal with a business, right? So we as a company, one, businesses tend to want to work with other businesses, right? Now, my origin story would say the opposite of that because I don't know if they didn't realize they weren't working with a business. At least that very first one, right? The second one I had already established. By the
It
time
was
that
the
one came
90s,
around,
Ryan.
it was the
There's no
'90s, but
rules. No
there
rules.
were no rules, right? And we were fresh off the '80s, and so yeah, it was the Wild West, and to some degree that was the truth. But if you think about now, businesses do tend to like to work with other businesses,
Yep.
especially the higher end you start getting. And to be clear, it's not like we have all five Fortune 100 companies wrapped up or anything like that. And that's not even who I'm chasing. I'm just saying that. Um, so if you know that, right, and you happen to get in your foot in the door with a business, hey, one of the things that y how do you set yourself apart? Well, one, you got to put on a decent class, but if you can remove friction, right?
Hmm.
The thing I ask of any new client, anytime we go into anywhere that's brand new, we've never been to before, I ask them, you don't have to give me names. I don't have to know who your provider was before. Is why have you chosen a new provider? That is always a question that I ask
Yep.
because it's interesting to me. Um, Businesses tend to be more loyal and less fickle than an individual, right?
Yeah.
An individual, if they, type in CPR classes near me, you have the subset of people that are going to pick the very first place that shows up. That's where they're going to go. You have another subset of people that are going to look and see, oh, well, this place is charging $75. This place is charging $50. I'm going to go to the place that's charging $50, especially if it's coming out of their own pocket, right?
Hmm.
So you have that group of people. Businesses can be the same way. You have some that are just looking for the absolute cheapest thing. And, but by and large, if your pricing is so off from the rest of the world because you think everybody's charging, and I'm making these numbers up, but everybody's charging $75 for a CPR class. I'm going to charge $35. And in doing that, I'm going to capture everybody, right? Well, your mindset is limited because you think everybody's looking for the cheapest. Not everybody is. And in
No.
fact, businesses will often look at that as a huge red flag
Yeah.
that you are so far off the median that why? They're not thinking, "Oh, the other 50 companies that are on this list that are all right about the same ballpark must be screwing us, and this is the only person that cares." They look at that as there's something wrong,
Yeah.
and so they'll often steer away. And so our pricing, because I don't have to worry to get 100 people, 100 students, I have to worry about 100 different individual needs, wants, what are they looking for versus a business, and we don't price gouge. We don't just say, oh, well, you can afford to pay $150 a person. So that's what we're going to charge you. Right. Our fee, we charge the same. Now, having said all of that, we do some pro bono classes where it doesn't cost certain places a dime. And
Right.
it's, and we do that. That's an intentional move as well, but that is not an advertising thing. That is I very much want to give back, what I've been, part of what I've been blessed with. And so, yeah, so when you look at the pricing, like you can price yourself out of the market by being way too high or way too low. And when a business looks at that, they're probably, I don't know how much shopping around they are necessarily doing, but if you get in there and they also tend to stay loyal because they know, like, all right, if I need to buy widgets, this is who we go to. If I need to buy cogs, this is who we go to. If I need CPR training, this is who we go to. They want to run their business. What they don't want to do is babysit their vendors.
So Ryan, Roy, what state are you in
Illinois.
for the? Okay, and what's the furthest customer that you have from you?
Oh, um, well, we have done some classes in Florida, but that's not a routine thing. But
Consistent of a B two
consistent,
B.
I would say, probably Kansas,
Okay,
Kansas, Arkansas.
so across state lines. So you've already said you're not the cheapest,
Yep.
right? And you're offering the same certification as anybody else. If we're just
Yeah.
being okay,
Yeah.
so I'm going to keep pushing on this one because there's
Okay.
a reason they've stuck with you. Why aren't they going to someone who's cheaper and
Okay.
closer?
All right. So,
Because that's what everyone thinks, right? Not everyone. Sorry.
right.
There's a common conversation. You already hit it on the third thing. Like, so and so, I'm losing it because this
Yeah.
person offered to undercut the price for $35 instead of
Mhm.
$55. Should I cut my price? How are they offering it for $35? Okay,
Mhm.
so we're going back to this.
Yep.
Why aren't they going to someone local who's cheaper?
All right. So, for one, if they have chosen us, they've already chosen us over somebody else that's probably cheaper, right? Now, maybe they didn't
Also
know somebody
important.
else was cheap. Right. I mean, maybe they didn't know that there was another cheaper option out there. I'm sure that could be true too, right? But they have chosen us at whatever our price point is for the service that we're going to provide.
Hmm.
Um, and so I would like to think that initially they're choosing that because they, if they call and they like the conversation they had, they like what they had to hear.
Yeah.
That we are not the conversation isn't, yes, we can provide your CPR training and get everybody your cards the same day. That is true. They're going to get their cards the same day, right? Right before they leave class, they're going to end up with their cards. And they're going to get a CPR card, a first aid, or whatever it is. What they hear from us that they may not necessarily hear from everybody else is, look, our goal isn't to come in and do the fastest class and get everybody in and out as quick as we can. Our goal is to make sure that whether this is at work at your business or at home with their family, if something happens, they feel more confident, better prepared to to respond to that situation. So if they're taking
Yep.
a CPR class, it may not happen at work, right?
Yep.
But if it does, is it a coworker? So they probably know them. It's probably somebody that's going to matter to them. Um, but we want them to be prepared, right? And that's just not some philosophical, let me get on the sermon, and preach, right? But that is truly why we're doing this. I can go in and do the world's fastest class and basically almost do you pay me money, I give you a card. We'll never do that. My goal is not just to throw up some videos and watch you beat on a mannequin for a few minutes and then be like, thank you for your time. See you later. It's, do you feel confident? Do you feel better prepared than when you walked through here that you're going to be able to do this? You
Yep.
know, and when I think sometimes when they hear that, that stuff matters to them. And again, you're going to have the business that just wants the cheapest place, or they just, maybe they don't care about the cost of the card, but they just, hey, as long as we meet requirements, and you got that. But for some, it matters the why.
Yeah. Had a conversation yesterday, future podcast person coming on, but we were talking about talking to daycares and stuff, and like the
Yeah.
story that always hits me if you're talking to a business is like, especially like a daycare situation.
Hmm.
If an emergency happens here with a child,
Hmm.
there's one of two news stories because that's going in the news.
Hmm.
Either the child didn't make it
Yep.
or someone was a hero.
Yep.
It
And,
doesn't just go away.
hey, and so to be real honest, the behind the scenes thought that doesn't necessarily get divulged to those is because we also have a lot of early learning centers and daycares and things like that. Is I don't want to be the one that's the CPR provider for that place that had absolutely no idea what to do and they just had their CPR training last month, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
I don't want my name attached to that.
Yeah.
I would like to have it attached. Well, actually, I'd like for it to never, they don't have to ever do it. But I if they're going to have to do that in that daycare setting, yeah, I'd like to be the one where they say, oh, thank God it was Respond 365 taught our class and they made sure we were prepared. Like that's never going to make the news, but I would like that mindset to be, you know, man, I'm really glad that they put on a not just a good course, right?
Yeah.
But it's an effective course,
Hmm.
and yeah.
So the thing too, with listening to what you say to the business, what they're getting,
Hmm.
it's a great pitch. Um, it still means like this is, I don't want to point out for people who are listening and or will watch this. Just because the logic is there and we're probably all
Yeah,
nodding along like people should care about being competent, they shouldn't just
sure.
want to, get the CPR card, all that
Yeah,
stuff that is right, and the pitch
yeah,
can be great and eloquent. You're still gonna get no's.
yeah,
And people that if you're sticking to that, people
yeah,
are gonna say, okay, cool, I don't care, I'm going to the cheapest provider.
yeah,
You still get no's, no matter how good that is. And I'm nodding
yeah.
along and I'm like, everyone should say yes to Ryan. You're still gonna get no's.
Right.
Probably more often than not.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's okay because here's the other thing, and this is probably going to come out and sound really, really negative or arrogant or some way it's not intended. Um, I'm not going to beg for us to be your provider. I'm going to explain to you, you know, what we offer and what our goal is and why it matters, the provider that you choose, right? You're going to make your decision. And, so if you say, well, that's all well and good, but these people over here, it's $10 cheaper per person. Okay. I hope that they provide you an excellent class because I really do, right? I don't want, I hope they provide you an excellent class. And if they do, then you saved yourself some money and still got effective training that prepares your people. But if they don't, please feel free to call us and we'll come in and do a class. I'm not going to say, all right, you know what? We'll knock our price off $10. It, it you know, that's not the I'm not competing like that, right? And I don't mean that to sound arrogant. I'm not saying, well, we're worth this amount of money. That's not it. But if you do that, like how then you just start chasing numbers, pricing and no.
Yeah,
So
it requires some level of investment to maintain
yeah,
quality. And if
yeah.
you're teaching to notice the things that when you're talking about what you are providing to them and what are in the pitch that you're talking to them,
Hmm.
not once do you mention the word, well, you say they'll get the card the same day, which is
Right.
basically saying you're getting a receipt. But you're not once are you talking about the the card. You're talking
Yeah.
about the things that have a much greater value that $10 doesn't make a difference. When you're talking about
Right.
being prepared, uh, being confident,
Mhm.
actually handling the situation. That's not a there's not a $10 spread on the result.
Right. Right. Yeah, because the fact of the matter is every other place out there, right, has the I mean, well, I shouldn't say they all have the capability to give you because some places still have to submit rosters, wait for cards, and all that stuff. But
Yeah.
we're all going to get you a card. Okay. At the end of the day, everybody's going to get their card and their certification. And for some people, they don't care if they get it the same day or if they ever get it at all. They're just really looking for the checkbox on their whatever list of things that they have to have. But those are the things that are consistent across the board, right? Like, yeah, you're gonna get a card. Um, what's not consistent is the quality of the training, right? The instructors actually caring about not just coming in and meeting the criteria that the AHA or whoever says you have to meet. It's it, those are all things to help you accomplish a goal. Our goal isn't to get you a card. Our goal is to make sure that if you leave that class and 30 minutes later are presented with that scenario or 30 days, right? Or 18 months down the road, that you feel more confident, more prepared to effectively help.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And so, yeah. Um, so we don't chase prices. I don't look to be the cheapest and, you know, um, and I'm not competing with every place that's out there.
I think an important thing here too on the talking about B2B and multiple states is that
Mhm.
I would think, and feel free to comment on this,
Yeah.
as you went from going from an individual coming to an open class, there could be a lot of reasons they're coming to an open class, to
Mhm.
now serving a business. Business is buying more than just a certification card, to now
Mhm.
serving a business that has multiple locations. The education and the quality is obviously paramount. You have to be able to deliver it once at high quality.
Mhm.
Sounds like a lot of that also value is consistency in multiple places, like that the businesses that are working with you in multiple states, it's
Yeah.
as much about the quality of the education as it is your ability to deliver that consistently in
Yeah.
multiple locations so that they know what they're getting across all of those different places.
Correct. Yeah. And To be fair, the reason that we sort of exist out in the periphery like we do, because I said, at the onset, our core is basically Illinois, Missouri, right? And I don't even
Yeah.
have a desire to be the, CPR provider for every single person in both of those states, right? There's a
Yep.
lot of people. And so, but that's where the core of our stuff is. The B2B is also not just, um, us going out and gaining, XYZ company's business, to where we're your CPR provider. And I said also that money has never been the biggest motivator. So we also had an assisted living facility that's very large called us and wanted to know. They wanted, because right, to them, what they were doing was every location they had was responsible for finding their own CPR provider in the area, that they
Yep.
were. And they called us and they said, we really would like to have this under one umbrella. We have one business that's the point of contact that takes care of all of our CPR training. Can you do that? Well, the answer was yes, right? And
It's
not
always
because,
yes.
not this time, it wasn't because of naivety, right? It was just, yes, we can do that. But I said to them, I said, you have these, because we had a discussion about what does your structure look like? And come to find out, they have these nurses that um, they basically travel between these communities, and um, so what we did with them, I said, you know what, we can certainly do that, and we'd be happy to do that. However, you have your own people that you could, so we essentially made these traveling nurses BLS instructors, right? They teach their own people,
Yep.
and so they said, so now, I mean, you could look at it as, did we lose money? Well, yeah, sure, because we could have had hundreds of thousands of dollars a year from that one alone, right?
Right.
um but what made more sense was for us to train some of their own internal staff to do that, because what we don't have is the ability. If I go into any setting and somebody's not paying attention, I can't look at that person and go, "Hey, knock it off. Pay attention." You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that's not something you realistically can do, but they sure can, right? And those people have, some clout within and that working relationship has been incredibly phenomenal. So by virtue of them, um, having some places that are much further out, what happens is it kind of also helps us when someplace in, maybe remote Arkansas happens to give us a call and say, "Hey, we'd like this training." I already have a pool of some people in that area that I know are putting on good classes, right? That I'm seeing them. And they, they also then work for and we have zero other, I don't have any contractors at all, zero. If you're going to teach a class on behalf of us, you are an employee, because I'm not fighting with the IRS. So um but yeah,
And
so that
Michael,
helped us grow.
just show me in because I know Michael, I'm slow on your
Yeah.
question here. I believe most of what Ryan's talking about is AHA. It's all almost all AHA, right?
Yes. Yeah. And that's also part of we have all the AHA classes. We, ACLS, BLS, PALS, ACLS EP. We also do AAP, or AAP, NRP, which is through the AAP. There's lots of acronyms going on here, right?
We've got a lot of neonatal that is coming on with
Yeah.
just just added another training center that's doing the ENA stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we do ITLS, pediatric
Uh,
ITLS, and PEP. And so, and then we do have some HSI. And primarily we have them for the blended learning is considerably more cost effective
mhm.
for like a daycare or a school or learning center.
Yep.
that may want to do that. That allows us to not have to charge, a higher price for somebody that wants blended learning. And so we offer that as well. We don't do any Red Cross. There's just not really ever been a need for it, and I don't, uh, but one thing I did want to kind of say is that's one of the things with, not seeing everybody as a competitor. Uh, it- you know, to be clear, I guess by nature, if you're providing the same service, you sort of are competitors by definition, maybe, right? But the way I look at is this: if I sell high end luxury cars, and then across town somebody else has a used car lot, and they're selling decent cars, right? But they're on average 10 miles or 10 years old, and 100,000 miles.
Yep.
We're both selling cars, but we're not competitors, right? Our target audience is very different.
Yep.
And so, in fact, I work, with a few places around here, but there's really one that if we get a call and somebody says, "Hey, yeah, I'm a traveling nurse and I need to renew my BLS and ACLS," is that, or I need a skills check off. Hey, you know what? We don't do that, but I actually, I have somebody that I very much trust that I'm going to give you their phone number. Here's her name, but as soon as we hang up, I'm also going to give her a call and let her know you might be calling. And some people would look at that and go, "Are you serious? Like you just, you know, you just lost $300 or whatever, they would charge for that." And yeah, yeah, I am serious because we don't do that. Um,
I think
and
you have to you have to be intentional about the customer you're trying to serve and then serve your customer.
yeah,
You can't try and position. You should knowing why you're different than your competitor is important,
yeah,
but just because your competitor has certain customers doesn't need. I mean, we even
yeah,
even at Hovind, that is a thing for us. Not everyone is. Uh, we are not the platform for everyone.
correct. Yeah,
And part of it is our goal, and we've written about this. Sorry, we'll go into Hovind for one quick sec.
no,
Our
no,
goal
no,
has
no.
always been we want to focus on helping to drive outcomes. And you can be, you uh if you want the most features for the lowest cost, there is a provider out there for you. It is
Yeah,
not us.
yeah,
Um, Maintaining a lot of features is expensive, and also, you know, if you have a 96 crayon box or an 8 crayon box, it doesn't make you any better of an artist, right? So for
yeah.
us, you have to know who you're serving, and I think that there are good products for each customer. And I love the idea that you refer people over, and we try and do that too when it's not a fit.
Yeah, yeah, and to Michael's question, kind of prompted that for me was, we don't do Red Cross, but I know who I'm going to send somebody to if we, when we get those phone calls that say, "Hey,
Yeah.
I'm looking for a Red Cross class," and and we tell them, politely, like, "Hey, you know what? That's not something we offer," but we don't tell them good luck. We still want them to get the training, right? We want
Yeah,
them to get
totally.
what they need.
Yeah.
We tell them, "Hey, we don't, you know what? We don't offer Red Cross classes, but." Again, and it's not the same business, by the way, that we're referring them to. It's a different business, and they only do Red Cross. In fact, they don't do any AHA. Um,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, so it are they competitors? I mean, but not really. I mean, not the way I choose to look at it. And think about how many people need whatever it is you offer. Like we're talking mostly about CPR and first aid here, but like how many people out there need that training? And if your mindset is like mine, I don't want to be the biggest with, 5,000 instructors and blah, 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 right? Um, that I'm less likely to start viewing everybody as competitors. Now, if I want to take, my goal is to be the CPR provider for everybody in the United States, then everybody suddenly becomes my competitor. And, so now I want to squash everybody and I got to offer all the things and I got to do, nah, that's just not, and it's okay. They're all good avenues to choose, right? Nothing wrong
The
with any of them.
the thing we Mike so in the last podcast too, and now I think this is
Mhm.
going to be a theme. So I apologize to everyone who keeps tuning in because we're going to say the same thing. I think the numbers roughly like 10% or less have are certified. So you
Yeah.
got 90% of the people who think the number that was released is that 40% when asked want it. So there's we're at 25% of the people who want to be certified have it.
Mhm.
So much of that is friction.
Mhm.
The idea that everyone is a competitor now makes everyone kind of fragment into different areas because they think, oh, if I'm in the same area or if I'm helping my competitor or anything like that, then they're going to
Mhm.
get people or not. And the
Mhm.
bottom line is the bigger problem we have right now is that it's hard for students to find providers
Mhm.
because everybody thinks of everyone else as a competitor. And if we're actually making it easier for students to more consistently find people or businesses find people, the industry itself can grow massively, which means
Mhm.
everybody can grow massively. And I think part of what we're trying to do with also this platform is not only give people other ideas for how they can grow their business, but the second thing is get more students to find providers and get past this idea that we all are that everyone's competing with each other because there's a large amount more people than can be certified by
Yeah.
everyone that needs to get certified still.
Yeah. And, one of the things I appreciate about that, I know you and I were talking before we went live, but one of the things I appreciate about these podcasts is it's never hey, we want you to be a guest on here and tell us why Hoven's so great, right? Like, well, why do you love Hoven? Which goes to, as I said earlier, it goes to your guys' core, right? Like, you're, sure, you want to sell a product, like we all do. We're all in business, right? But you're looking to fundamentally change those things, right? And I look at some of these the things we've talked about today. My viewpoint is very different than a lot of people out there. And there will be some that share some of my viewpoints, right? And everything in between. And the same is true, but every person that you've had on, I look at and, like the first guest that I can't remember what she charged, like 5 grand for a CPR instructor class, right? Or whatever it was. And
Mhm.
I'm like, you know, on the surface, you're like, well, that's insane. But then you listen, right? And you're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, makes
They're
sense.
thinking
And
way beyond what it is. Yeah.
way beyond. And, and I'm not, to be very clear, like, I'm not some like whatever, I don't know, some thing, but yeah, I do recognize that I think about things probably a little different than maybe most of us do. And I'm sure that that has probably maybe, cost us a customer here and there. And that's okay because I'm not looking at what did I lose. I'm looking at, are we achieving the goals that we set out to do, and those goals aren't financially based. I mean, I want to have a sustainable business, which we do, um, but I want to have that sustainable business so that we can provide this training, right, that better prepares people. And I care about my instructors and I care about our clients, but I care about my instructors first.
Mhm.
They're not always right. And it's not the, customer is always right or anything either. But if if I care more about my clients and I put no time or effort into my instructors, and I say mine, but like the people that are either they are employees of ours or they're aligned instructors and they're doing their own thing. You know what? If they want to, hey, we're thinking about, doing this. I'm happy to talk to them. I don't see them as competition either, right?
Yep.
I want to help you grow. I don't want to make a ton of profit off of you. I want to help you grow, and just like we price classes, nope, those things we see on the like instructor forums where it's, I need a new TC and who's got the cheapest cards? Don't call me, right? Because that's not us. I don't. We're not way off. I mean, but yeah. If you're looking for $4 BLS cards, not us. But I assure you, you're going to get the value for the addition, right? And so, um, yeah. I mean, it's that same kind of mindset. Is we want to take care of you and offer you as the instructor a much better experience than,
We the interesting thing about they're again going back to like what we're trying to encourage is, and what you've done, um, you've been intentional about going out and getting customers, and the customers have a relationship with you. We didn't talk about any of the math side, but
Mhm.
I can tell you from just the way that you've acquired that customer, you're running a pretty good margin on those customers, not
Uh-huh.
intentionally, but the
Mhm.
way that you acquired the customer, they have a relationship with you. And I've talked about this with providers. There's like four, whether it's touch points, four touch points. Who am I
Mhm.
going to? Who
Mhm.
to teach to find for the service? Who teaches it? Where does the card come from? And then who do I follow up with?
Mhm.
And you're owning at least three of those four touch points. The card's coming from the AHA. So many of these businesses now are own one of that touch point. They're getting they're getting the student from going to the AHA website or a directory. So
Mhm.
your brand doesn't know you. Second, content's coming from there. Third, they meet you as an instructor, but at this point, you're just a DoorDash driver at that point. And then when they get the card, if you're not using a platform to deliver the card comes from the agency. And I think
Mhm.
that's where this challenge of people feeling like they need to pinch pennies on everything. I got to get the cheapest card.
Yeah.
I don't have money to invest in a platform. I can't do all these things because they're in that part that's the race to the bottom,
Yeah.
because you haven't been intentional about building a business, investing, and getting customers that are coming to you, not to someone that can deliver
Right.
a card.
Yeah. And like you said, you're right. Not Hoven isn't for everybody, and all these other platforms. They It's not that they don't need to exist, right? Because some people, if you just need a repository to hold information, right? You're not maybe you do have a business, but like you're not managing a bunch of instructors. You're not overseeing a huge business. Like you really just want a better way than pen and paper, and you want some of those features there. Look, I've used every single one of them, every single platform. Okay. And I haven't, I don't want to knock any of them because it wasn't this is a horrible platform. I'm leaving. Right. Um,
Yep.
and, like it, the, again, and it's not always about the dollars. I mean, we talked about this with like the SEO stuff because I'm a B2B. Yes, I still need people to find us. Right. But I don't get as much benefit from the Hoven platform on the SEO side as somebody that's doing the more traditional, like, hey, I've got a brick and mortar, I'm looking for people to
Yeah.
come here. And so I have just, stayed where I was or, yeah, but, there is benefit still, but I believe in what's happening, on the back end and what you and Shubs are really trying to do here. But also, I will just tell you that the instructor feedback and the student and our client feedback has been, and I know that these are never designed to be a plug, but just the practical, and you've heard this even outside of this, the practical side of it is every single person has been like, holy cow, this is like, that experience for them is frictionless.
Yeah.
And when you make people happy and you take friction away and you provide a good service, right? I can't take the friction away because I don't have the prowess technically to do something like you guys are doing. That's when you partner with others, right? And so what are your needs? Like, I mean, and I look at it with other things that we use. We use free versions of some programs because it fits what we need to do. And there are some
Yeah.
other things that we pay much more, and there are cheaper options out there. But so it's all about, I mean, you have to figure out what's best for you. And I could give you, everything we do here and you not have a successful business, right? Sometimes it's geography. Sometimes it's, hey, this isn't really what I want to do. And so my kind of game plan and what we do isn't going to work for you. But, you know, eh, there are other places that do things very differently. And I love to find out what other people do, not so I can copy it, right? It's just always interesting to see like how you could have two equally successful places and they do things very different.
Completely different. One
Yeah.
common thread, and I'm gonna wrap us here
Yeah,
because we've been
absolutely.
going for a sec. I think one common thread we're now seeing though is that, and I'll pull one from Mike on the last call too, because he's thinking, what do I do? A thing I like that he said at the end, and going with this theme of just being intentional about the business that you want to build, which then means being intentional about the customer that you want to serve, is having the conversation with them about what they need and reducing their friction and figuring out how to do that. Because that's the
Yeah.
common thread is you had a customer, you've built a business to serve that customer's need. You've invested in areas, some free, some expensive, to
Mhm.
serve that customer, and it's built you a sustainable business. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean everybody needs to follow exactly what your setup is, more so than figure out you know,
Yeah.
panel who your customer is.
Yeah. That's why, I mean, I like to talk to other training centers, training sites, whatever they are, but just, business owners in general. One, I'm partly fascinated by that, but I also just like to learn, right? It's and
Yep.
I'm it's no different than being an educator that still goes and takes classes as a student, right? You like to be on that other side of the table or see what else is happening, and I think that's awesome. Like, just even if we never have a hey, I'll send you referrals kind of relationship, it's just awesome to talk to people. So
Yeah.
I really
And
appreciate you
I
having
hope
me
we
as a
get more of
guest.
this. If anyone tuning in there, for just in general too, is there's nothing to lose here with people being more willing to share about what their business is and why it's successful.
Yeah,
It is hard to, you can't just copy what someone else is doing because it's face to the customer, and
yeah,
we need a little bit less of the answer to your business problems are in the pan, because it's not. Those are the rules, not
right.
how to build a business. So
Sure. Yeah, well, right. Yeah, I mean, and
it's
think
in
about
the
if we,
pan.
yeah,
Okay. I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's not all in there, and and I feel bad for some of those people that ask questions because I'm like, it is not their fault. I mean, sometimes it is. Sometimes it's their fault, but it is not their fault if they took an instructor class that consisted of hey, thank you for paying me X number of dollars. I'll process your card and good luck to you.
yeah.
Yeah, not their fault. So.
Ryan, I appreciate you spending time with us. Would love to have you back, but thank you.
I'm happy. Yeah, anytime. So I really appreciate you having me on here and anybody that's on. I know it's hard. I can't really see who's on and all that, but
I know they got to make this bigger.
yeah, happy to chat and just we can tell war stories and talk about our bad experiences. I'm fine with that too. So
Especially thinking that your EMT salary is going to pay for business school.
man,
Uh,
brother, I tell you, that's how little I knew. I had no idea. Like I was like, EMT, what is that? And we didn't have the internet back then, so
we actually have that. You and I have that in common, because when I was in college and I took an EMT class and I was going down that channel, everyone's asked, how'd you end up in tech? I was like, well, I mean,
yeah,
look at the
right.
two paths. Um, so for anyone else, I send out a recap. It's on the sit rep. It's free. I will send out, you got to give me some time to edit this down. Um, but I'll edit it. It'll go out in the email. If you're subscribed, it's free. All of Ryan's contact information and where you can find in his website will all be there. Or you can reach out to me and I'm happy to make introductions. But thank you for tuning in, Ryan. Have a good rest of your day.
John, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Shubs, if you're listening, sorry you couldn't be on, man.
The internet gods were not kind to Shubs today. They
It
took
said it's
him out.
Friday the 13th, so
I know.
all right. I
All right.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Bye.